Prita, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after Krishna had given Arjuna this whole vast body of wisdom about what to do now in this situation that he was in, he asks him a simple question: have you understood the message? And Prabhupada writes in the purport, or I think he says it in a lecture, I'm not sure, one of the two, he says Krishna was ready to explain the whole thing all over again. This is another wonderful lesson, that when you have a very deep and meaningful conversation with someone or a discussion with someone, it's good to sort of end it with like, hey, does this make sense? And this is the result Krishna was hoping for. Are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? That's very clear communication, right? So the problem we tried to solve in the beginning, has it now been addressed? And if it hasn't, Krishna was ready to go through that whole science all over again. What a wonderful way to communicate, right? He didn't just say it and end the Bhagavad Gita. He said it, he asked for confirmation. Hey, is your illusion now destroyed? And then if Arjuna said, no, it's not destroyed, Krishna was ready to explain the whole Bhagavad Gita to him once again. But of course, Arjuna doesn't say that. And affection. We see throughout the Bhagavad Gita, there's so it's a conversation between God and Arjuna, right? So in one hand, it's a very sort of spiritual conversation, but really what the conversation hinges upon is the affection that Krishna had for Arjuna and vice versa. And in many places in the Bhagavad Gita, when you read the verses and some of the commentaries of the Acharyas, you find out there's actually a very emotional thread that runs throughout the text. There's a lot of love between the two of them. In the in the names that Krishna uses for Arjuna and vice versa, there's often a lot of affection. And the reason why Krishna is investing so much, there's a very beautiful story. At the very end of the Bhagavad Gita, or at the very end of the war, Krishna asks Arjuna to step off his chariot, right? So in those days, battles were, for those who may not be aware of the scenario, battles were fought using elephants, chariots, things like that. So Krishna asks Arjuna, please step off the chariot. And Arjuna says, that's unusual because the chariot driver should step off first. And so he asks Krishna, you should step down first, And Krishna's like, no, you step off first. And so Arjuna steps away and Krishna says, walk far away. And Arjuna walks far away from the chariot. And then Krishna steps off the chariot. And as soon as he steps off the chariot, do you know what happened to the chariot? Some people must know, right? It actually blew up. It blew up, actually, yeah. The going down is another story. That was Yudhishthira. He lied, or partially lied, so his chariot touched the ground. But it blew up, exactly. And Arjuna was really surprised. Why did this chariot blow up? Why was there a nuclear explosion on the battlefield after the war is over? And Krishna explains to Arjuna, actually, during the war, you were being attacked by so many missiles, so many weapons that would have definitely killed you. But because I was protecting you, I contained those weapons inside this chariot. But they're divine weapons, so once they're released, they have to destroy something. So I contained those weapons in this chariot, and so I was holding that force in until you were safe. And now that you're safe, I just let those weapons act, and the chariot blew up. It's also described elsewhere in the Mahabharata that at the end of every day's battle, Krishna would come to Arjuna's tent and rub his hands over his body personally so that all the wounds would heal up. That's really sweet, That's a very... So on one hand, yes, it is a conversation between God and Arjuna, and it's a message for the rest of humanity to learn. But what's really sort of, the conversation is really resting on the love that Krishna and Arjuna share for each other. And Krishna says it. He says in chapter 18, because you're my very dear friend, I'm speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear from me, for it is for your benefit. Right? So if we pay attention, we'll find throughout the Gita various verses and texts where Krishna is honestly admitting his affection for Arjuna. And actually, it's really important to also understand that Prabhupada said we're not just interested in the message of the Gita, we're also interested in the speaker of the Gita. So it's nice to get a sense of the spiritual context, but it's also nice to get a sense of the emotional context of the Gita, how there's a lot of affection being exchanged between the two. How to work. Here's a wonderful picture of how Arjuna works. He's beheading, who was he beheading there? Was it Ashwatthama? Jayadratha, right? Yeah. So how many of you have to do this for work? Anyone? No? Maybe some school teachers, right? At least you wish you could, but anyways. So in the Gita, Krishna is telling Arjuna how we should work in this world. And there's two nice verses here I wanted to share. The first is from the 8th chapter. Krishna says to Arjuna, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mam evas yasya asamshayaha. Anybody want to read the translation? Akhandanam, you want to read the translation? So the reason I'm sharing this verse is because it's a very famous verse. Those of you who have studied the Gita or have been in Bhakti Shastri, as many of you have, or you've heard from other devotees, undoubtedly you've heard this verse. The reason I wanted to bring it up is because recently I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and we were just discussing what does it mean to work in this world, right? We all have to have a job and we have to make money, and oftentimes we're confronted with this dilemma of, like, Kandanam got into one of the top business schools in the world, and so he had this option: should I keep working, or should I go to this business school, spend a lot of money, and then make more money in the future? These are all decisions we have to go through. Get a promotion, not get a promotion, invest in this, invest in that. I could quit my job and start my own business. Isn't it, we all sort of, especially in America, it's the land of unlimited opportunities. In India, people usually would just like start working in one place and just stay with it for 15, 25, 30 years, at least back in the day, right? Because job security was sort of very rare. So you would just maintain and hold on to your position. But nowadays, people are switching jobs all the time, isn't it? How many of you have recently switched jobs? Okay, cool. So 3 people in this room, right? 3 people. And how many of you are considering switching jobs? Don't worry, your boss won't find out. Okay, good. No one's going to send this video to your HR person like, wait, what? That guy, he just got a bonus. And he's thinking about quitting. No, so this is something we're all confronted with, right? Look for a career, change your workplace, things like that. So what are some of the variables we need to make those kind of decisions? And in the Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, look, you have to fight. It's your duty as a warrior. But fight and don't stop thinking about me at the same time. And what this really means for those of us who are practicing Krishna consciousness or spirituality is our work should not take away from our spiritual practice. So when we're thinking about what kind of work we should do in this world, or whether we should change jobs or not change jobs, or make more money or make less money, or move here or go to Seattle or work for Amazon or not work for Amazon, is we should just ask ourselves a simple question: is this work that I'm doing, does it provide the amount of money that I need to be peaceful? Because if it's too much, it might be a little bit like overwhelming. If it's too little, it's a little depressing. Right? And so just the right amount of money and what you need to be comfortable is going to be different for every single person. But the whole idea is we work in this world so that we create enough mental stability, enough emotional stability, enough sort of financial stability so that we can have a dynamic spiritual practice. Right? If we find that we're working so hard that we have no time to meditate, we have no time to do something spiritual, we have no time to go associate with spiritually minded people, all we do is work and watch Netflix, that's not a great job, right? If the work is so emotionally taxing that literally you need like 3 hours of Netflix just to, compensate for 8 hours of being at work. Like I have this friend, right? He does 2 jobs at the same time. This is the modern economy, you can do it. He's got 2 laptops, so he works in DevOps, and he's got 2 jobs. He makes $290,000 a year, right? But the work is so stressful. He told me after he finishes work, he just gets in his car, he just drives around aimlessly for 2.5 hours. Because he can't think. It's so taxing on his mind that he can't literally think after working so hard for 8 hours. So he just drives around aimlessly for 2.5 hours. So there's no question. Then you come home, it's like 9 o'clock at night, so you eat a little dinner and you go to sleep, right? So ideally, if this person was if he was practicing spirituality, I would say, do you really need $300,000 a year? I mean, you drive a Toyota, it's 10 years old. And he would probably say no, and then I would say, just quit a job. That's enough. $150,000 is a lot of money to live comfortably, right? But so this is the point. How should we work in this world? We should work in such a way that our work doesn't consume our spiritual aspiration. If we find that our work is consuming our spiritual aspirations, then either we have to re-examine how much we're working, how we're working, where we're working, and if there's a potential career for us that would allow us to have a thriving spiritual life at the same time. Because it's really not worth it. I know it sounds a bit like cliched to say it, but money doesn't bring complete fulfillment and happiness. We need money. Don't get me wrong. Don't think that, the temple, they say, you need money. We need money to build temples, to maintain temples. We need money to buy cars, buy houses, maintain our families. We definitely need money. Just like when you look at a plate, right? The best part of a pizza is the cheese, right? But you can't eat just cheese. That's my point, right? So yes, money is definitely important, but it can't just be about money. There has to be a balanced sort of development. You have your cheese, you have your salad, you have your carbs, you have your fiber, you have all of that. And then it's a wholesome, nutritious diet. In the same way, it can't just be about making money and external success, right? So that's what Krishna is telling to Arjuna. Think of me and fight. So are we able to think of Krishna and work in this world? That's a question for each and every one of us to sort of ask ourselves. The other sort of guidance or wisdom from the Gita on how to work in this world is understanding the difference between karmadikar and bhakti adhikar. So I'll quote this verse here. Manmana bhav madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te prati jane priyo sime. Who wants to read the translation? Anyone? Yes, Mataji, go ahead. So, 1865. Thank you so much, Mataji. It was read very well. So this is another sort of key takeaway from the Bhagavad Gita, is Krishna is telling Arjuna that he should think of him and become his devotee. At the same time, in the Gita, we find this message, a very famous verse that I think everyone from India knows this verse, right? Karmane vadikaraste mahaphaleshu kadachana. Isn't it? Who knows this verse? Karmane. See, most of you know this verse. And most of you probably heard it before you even came to ISKCON, right? And in fact, when you told members of your family that you're joining ISKCON, they were like, yes, I also love the Gita, karmane vadikaraste. Even my uncle, he's Jain, he doesn't even believe in God. He's like, karmane vadikaraste. You know, everyone in India knows this verse, right? Work without attachment to the fruits of your activities, right? This is a very famous verse that's shared in terms of how we should work in this world. But this is for those who don't have faith in God. For those who don't have faith in Bhagavan or God or Krishna, they should work with detachment. It'll keep them peaceful in this world. But for those of us who already have a little bit of faith, a little bit of conviction that life has a higher purpose, there is a divine or Krishna, and I have a relationship with this divine, then what we should do along with working is just practice a vibrant spiritual life. That's another very wonderful message in the Gita. Is it's sort of connected to the first point, actually, to be honest with you, is that we should always remember that for us, the importance of working in this world is not so much to practice detachment or the fruits of our labor. We hear this message quite a lot, which is definitely important. But more important is to remember that we have some faith, and how can I nurture my faith while working at the same time? So sort of similar to the first point, but it's just important to remember that a lot of those verses in the Gita about detachment and giving up the fruits of our actions, it applies to those who don't have faith in Krishna, who don't have faith in the highest goal of life. But if someone does have faith in the highest goal of life, then we should just practice on becoming good devotees. And all of that will just sort of happen naturally, the detachment, the giving up of the fruits, all of that will just happen very naturally. And the last topic here, we're almost done. Premananda Mataji, can I take like 7 more minutes? 3 minutes to discuss this slide and then 4 minutes for reflections. Thank you so much. 7 German minutes, I promise. Okay. Last slide. This is one of my favorite slides. So self-development. So here's three sort of wisdom points from the Gita that we can learn. The first is conquering passions, right? A very important part of self-development is to just be able to control our emotions. Because the world that we live in today, we're often confronted with situations and circumstances that can be emotionally a little bit overwhelming, isn't it? And it becomes a little difficult to sort of see clearly and think clearly in times like that. So in the 3rd chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So lust here in the Gita doesn't just refer to like sexual lust or sort of the physical form of lust. It also just refers to the desire for unending desires. It also just refers to the idea of just having newer and newer desires to gain something else in this world, right? This sort of insatiable appetite. It's like we have a 3-bedroom house today, and then maybe we go to Mukunda's house and we're like, wow, that's a beautiful townhouse. And then the desire comes up, I want a townhouse like that. Then we go to, who has a bigger house than Mukunda's? Maybe Pratibhava Prabhu's house. And we go to his house and we're like, I want a house like this now. And so as we keep going, right, we have a simple car, then we see Daita's Cybertruck, and we're like, I want that. So we're just never satisfied. This is also lust, constant desire to, I think there's a word for it in modern America, it's called level up. Isn't it, Prahlad? It's called leveling up. It's like leveling up, right? The next one, the next upgrade, right? Why? Just because someone else has it, I don't have it, I need to level up. This is not very satisfying, to be honest with you. If we're always looking to level up, when are we satisfied? So Krishna is telling Arjuna something very simple. Connect with the fact that you're something beyond the body and mind. And with that awareness that you are something spiritual, control the unending cycle of passions that rotate through our mind. And this is actually a very powerful practice. I encourage you to try this in the next 1 or 2 weeks, if you can remember. When you're dealing with some sort of overwhelming thought, desire, or emotion, just take a moment, take a deep breath, Remind yourself, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm an eternal soul. And as soon as you have that distance between your thoughts and your feelings and your true self, you'll find yourself gaining control. It's really powerful. I've done it many times, right? As soon as you have that little bit of distance between your thoughts and your feelings and your true self, you find yourself gaining traction and control in the situation. And this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna, right? Knowing yourself to be transcendental, learn to control the lust of your mind. And he tells Arjuna in the 5th chapter, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the forces of desire and anger, he will be well situated and happy in this world. So a formula for happiness given so clearly, right? There's no, what can you say beyond this? It's so beautiful. One who's able to tolerate the urges, so the constant desire to level up, to upgrade, to have more, to have more. If one is able to just tolerate that, right? And check those forces, like, is there really a need for it, right? Is there really a need for that 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 bedroom house? Is there really a need? There's only 3 of us. There's a Buddhist saying, there might be 100 mattresses in the room, but you only sleep on one, right? It's a really nice saying. So one who's able to do that, such a person is happy, isn't it? The happiest person. There's a very nice story from the Greek tradition. Maybe I'll end with this, or yeah, I'll end this particular portion with this. Alexander the Great once went to meet this famous Greek philosopher who lived in a barrel. And he was known for being a little eccentric. Has anybody heard this story about the philosopher in the barrel? Rahel's heard it because he's been to many of my classes, but you've heard it also. Anybody else, the philosopher in the barrel? No? Okay, good. You'll hear a new story today for the first time. So there was, at Greek times, there was this famous philosopher. He lived in a barrel, like a wooden barrel. And he would walk around town saying profanities to people, naked sometimes. He was a bit of an avadut, like Rishabdev. But if you would ask him some spiritual question, a philosophical question, he would give you this like one-line answer that would just blow you away, right? So he was very famous as a result of being this eccentric madman who probably was very enlightened. So Alexander the Great, the king of the world, heard about him and went to pay him a visit and came to the top of the hill where his barrel was located. Alexander came with his party, and he saw the barrel and he said, I forget the name of the philosopher, but he said, hey, so-and-so, I'm here to see you. And the philosopher said, who are you? And he said, I'm Alexander the Great, the king of the world. So the philosopher poked his head out of his barrel, and he looked at Alexander and his giant troop of soldiers, and he said to him, can you step to the side a little because you're blocking my sunlight? And then he went back into his barrel because it was cold. You know, he wanted that nice sun to enter his barrel. And Alexander just sort of chuckled and walked away with his ministers. And as he was walking away, his minister says, what a fool. Alexander says, what do you mean, what a fool? And the minister says, here you are, the emperor of the world. You're visiting him. He lives in a barrel. He could have asked you for a kingdom. He could have asked you for anything. You've come to pay him a visit. And all he said to you was, step aside so the light can enter my barrel. And do you know what Alexander said at this point? He said, I am trying to conquer the whole world to have what he already has by living in a barrel, right? I'm trying to conquer the whole world to have what he already has by living in a barrel, because satisfaction is the most valuable thing in this world, right? And the last 2 points of sort of self-development, I hate to rush it, but actually, I'm not going to rush it. We'll just leave these 2 for some other time if I come back. And maybe was there anything else? Yeah, so we'll end with this. The Gita provides some powerful methodologies for life in terms of relationship, work, and self-development. And it's all there along with all the spiritual wisdom. So we'll just see if anybody has a reflection or a comment. Anything that stayed with you, anything that you heard today that's staying with you, that's sort of resonating with you, anything. Yes, Prabhu. How to practice Krishna consciousness? It's very simple. In the morning, before you go to work, you can sit before a picture of Krishna and chant on your beads Hare Krishna mantra for half an hour or 45 minutes. Then you can read the Bhagavatam for 15 or 20 minutes. And as you're working during your day, try to treat others with kindness and compassion and be tolerant, especially to your wife and the ones who are very close to you. And at the end of the day, after you've finished your day, again, spend some time chanting, reading, reflecting on what Krishna has said, and associate with devotees. Come, and as you become closer to Krishna, naturally Krishna will give you service, he'll give you more realizations, he'll give you ideas to grow in your spiritual life. Simple. Exactly. So that's all of us. Don't worry, you're not alone. We're all out of control. We're all crazy. You should have seen all of us before we started chanting. At least me, especially me. Not these people are all saintly, especially me. But if you have this regular practice of chanting every day, reading, and associating with devotees, and then eventually whatever food you eat in your house, you can offer it to Krishna. The devotees here, Pati Barbara, will teach you how to offer food to Krishna. And in this way, the mind will come under control, right? It comes under control, just like when you first start exercising. Maybe you can only exercise for 10 minutes. Then as you keep going, it becomes half an hour, 45 minutes. So definitely your mind will become like weaker and your soul will become stronger as you keep going. So all the best to you. Anybody else? A reflection or two before we end? Yes. Yeah, we'll be hanging out. I'll be here. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. When you say stir emotions, do you mean for yourself or for others? Right. That's what I was also thinking. Yeah, and you know, it's just so you know, this is why many of us choose not to be so authentic, because it's easier to live without conflict, without emotional agitation. So much easier, right? To just sort of pretend like, hey, everything's great, you're awesome, I love you. So yeah, the journey to how do you become more real, and one, I'll just share this one little tidbit and then we'll sort of end because it's getting really late. But when we talk about authenticity, it has a lot to do with being authentic to ourselves, knowing what we think, feel, and want. It may not, the extension of then expressing it to others may not happen till later, because that kind of social circumstances, because remember, you may want to be very authentic and you might be very authentic, but the other person may not be ready for that. So the first stage is just really coming in touch with your own self. How do you think, feel, and want? What are your true actual needs and desires? And sort of cultivating that from within. Communicating that to the outside world may come a little bit later. And it can only be done in a relationship of trust, just so you know. You can only communicate your true self to somebody who truly accepts you for who you are. And you know that relationships sort of can withstand the truth. And those are very rare and few in this world. So in the yoga tradition, we have a phrase, self-realization, right? Because it all begins with the self. So just in your own self, being in touch with how you think, feel, what are your true needs, being really aware of that. And then socially speaking, we may have to sometimes put on a face or do something just to not agitate the atmosphere, right? Which is fine, which is decent. We should know how to live in society as you know, supportive members of society. But at least for ourselves, we shouldn't be in any illusion, right? We might smile and tell somebody, yeah, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be super rich, this is the way to do it, blah, blah, blah. But deep in our heart, we should know, no, I want something else in my life. But just to sort of adjust in society, I'll give you a simple example, and I'll end with this, right? Anybody who becomes spiritually inclined from an Indian background has to do a lot of this, right? Like I remember when I first started coming to the temple, I had to tell my mom constantly, don't worry, I'll get a wife, I'll have kids, I'll have a house, I'll have a career. I left my job to become a monk. And that was a huge negotiation, sort of. It lasted 6 months with my parents, you know? So I had to do a lot of just reassuring that no, I don't worry, I will leave after 1 year and I'll go start working again and I've been here now, it's been 7 years. So... So, you know, and that's not, I'm not lying exactly. I just know that at this point, they may not fully understand or appreciate what I'm going through in life. And so, but I have to also protect their feelings and let them know that I respect them. So, but at least in my own self, I was very clear about what I wanted, who I was, what I was seeking in life. So I would say it all begins with yourself first, and then the stage 2 might come a lot later, and probably only a handful of relationships. I hope that helps. Okay, sorry, Purnima.
Thank you so much, Harishyam Prabhu. Please give a big hand, please. So our Sunday Feast lecture ends at 6:15. Today we are 6 6:40, and so I think this is like really gone overboard. But it was very nice hearing from you. But I'm just speaking about it because winter time and prasadam is all free packed and people just take it and go. That is the whole scene here. And you came late too, so so it's okay. It's all right. I think I can take my liberty with you. It's okay. So today's Sunday feast is sponsored by 3 families, Sridharan and Supriya, celebrating son Rishikesh's 9th birthday. Is Rishikesh here? Please, Ramdas Prabhu, please give them the prasadam. Wonderful Krishna conscious birthday to you. And Dev Iyer Prabhu is also sponsoring today because this is one of his close family member passed away, and after her death, this is the first birthday of her birthday, and so seeking the prayers and blessings from all the devotees. And the third person is Parth Trivedi and Kosha Pandya. They are requesting prayers for the onward journey of their mother, Srimati Lavangika Trivedi, and aunt Srimati Deepthi Trivedi, who passed away this year. So in memory of these departed souls, and also same time celebrating someone's birthday, we glorify the Supreme Lord. And so you please chant after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as always, just announcing that whether it is in memory of the departed souls or you are celebrating something special in your family, please, you can always contact Ramdas Prabhu. We make prayers and offerings here and distribute Sunday Feast Prasadam to the community at large. And before, Shyam Prabhu is not here, but we spend almost a whole day discussing and planning for this, how we are going to serve in this new temple. Construction is going on. So you please spread the words and spread the message regarding the progress in our construction, and do everything that is possible to help us make this happen and install our deities in the upcoming year. And thank you all again always for all your support. Prasadam is packed and it is waiting for you downstairs. You please collect it on your way out so that you don't have to crowd and, cause more problem for yourself. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. 7 is there, yeah. So we always do a kirtan at 7 o'clock. But yeah, just another, yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Dev Prabhu left. Deva. I don't know. Nobody came for it. Should I just say 1 minute? Hello, is Parth Trivedi family here? Parth Trivedi's family. Prabhu, yeah, please here. Please receive this.